Thank you for joining this MagMutual presentation on social media and healthcare, embracing the benefits and managing the risks. My name is Ruth Wood. I'm the Director of Operations for the Institute at MagMutual. I've been in healthcare risk management for the last 16 years, working closely with physician practices and hospitals on loss prevention and patient safety. I want to start with a review of the main goals of this program: to understand the role of social media in healthcare, to identify risks related to social media use, and to recognize risk reduction strategies. Please keep in mind that this is general information. I am not an attorney and cannot provide legal advice. For physicians joining today, you will receive 1 CME credit for your participation in this program. I have no financial disclosures. Let's start by looking at the usage on most common social media platforms. Every time I give this presentation, I update these numbers, and every time they increase dramatically. What you see here is the active users for Twitter, Facebook, Yelp, Snapchat, Instagram, and YouTube. Snapchat is new this time. Each of them have millions or billions of active users. The one I haven't added is TikTok, probably because I don't use it, but I'm sure your patients do. And so if you are wondering, TikTok has about 100 million monthly active US users, up nearly 800% from January of 2020. These numbers are astronomical and only growing. So let's now look at some statistics specific to healthcare. PricewaterhouseCoopers did a survey in the United States on their social media use in healthcare, and they found 42% of individuals viewing health information on social media look at health-related consumer reviews. Patients are looking for collective knowledge when it comes to their health-related decision-making. There are multiple voices out there who they can relate to and who will influence that decision-making. 32% of users post about their friends' and family's health experiences on social media. Stop, pause, start again. PricewaterhouseCoopers did a survey in the United States on social media use in healthcare, and they found 42% of individuals viewing health information on social media look at health-related consumer reviews. So patients are looking for collective knowledge when it comes to their health-related decision-making. There are multiple voices out there who they can relate to, and those people will influence their decision-making. 32% of users post about their friends' and family's health experiences on social media. Those social media platforms we talked about have become the modern-day forums for people to vent about their loved ones' health stories and struggles. I would bet that everyone participating in this presentation has seen a friend or family member write about their healthcare experience, good or bad, on social media. 29% of patients viewing health information through social media are viewing other patients' experiences with their disease. Patients expect reliable information from their physicians, but they're using social media to confirm and maybe learn more and familiarize themselves with others experiencing the same. Connecting with others suffering from the same diseases gives patients a basis on how things could go, regardless if it's for better or for worse. And this data is from 2012. It was a great study, which is why I've included it, but I venture to guess that those percentages would be significantly higher today. So let's look at some of the survey findings conducted in 2020 about online reviews. 90% of online reviews were used to evaluate physicians. 71% used online reviews as the very first step to finding a new doctor. This means that an online presence and reputation is critical and often the first impression you make on many potential patients. And 66% felt it's very or moderately important for providers to respond publicly to online reviews. So addressing complaints head on without violating HIPAA laws is a smart strategy. There's clear agreement that the benefits for physicians and healthcare organizations to engage online outweighs the risks. I've included just a few of those potential benefits on this slide. Not only will you see patient engagement, but community health benefits, increased communication, workforce opportunities. Just take a few seconds to review the list. Great points of value. So let's get into the risks. I'm going to highlight the major risks and some stories about how the use of social media has harmed both healthcare workers and their patients. There are a few different risks out there, and some overlap. Mistakes using social media can impact professional careers, personal relationships, have ethical implications, and serious legal ramifications. Here's an example of professional implications, medical boards. And I've pulled out the Georgia Medical Board as an example. The Georgia Medical Board was established to regulate the practice of medicine. It's comprised of 15 volunteer members who are appointed. Let's start again. Here's an example of professional implications, medical boards. I pulled out the Georgia Medical Board as an example. The Georgia Medical Board was established to regulate the practice of medicine. It's comprised of 15 members who were appointed. 13 are actively practicing physicians, 2 are non-physician consumer advocates, and 1 is a retired physician member. It is responsible for regulating over 50,000 professionals licensed in Georgia and has the authority to discipline. And this is similar to all other states' medical boards. Complaints are sent to the board by patients or family members, malpractice carriers reporting payments of settlements or damages, hospitals reporting adverse actions taken with regard to medical staff privileges, pharmacies reporting improper prescriptions or prescribing practices, and other practitioners and regulatory agencies. Common complaints that are filed with the board involving social media include inappropriate communication with patients online, the use of internet for unprofessional behavior, online misrepresentation of credentials, online violations of patient confidentiality, failure to reveal conflicts of interest online, online derogatory remarks regarding a patient, an online depiction of intoxication. These are the top complaints that are filed with the board involving social media posts. The board has a duty to investigate practically all complaints it receives. There are a lot of steps taken in a medical board investigation, and I could give a whole presentation on just this topic. But very generally, a clinician will receive a complaint letter and be required to respond. The board will review the matter and generate a finding. In my experience, most complaints are found to be without merit, but if the board determines unprofessional conduct occurred, they will impose sanctions through a consent order. Those sanctions can include medical license revocation or suspension, probation, education requirements, conditions for practicing medicine, such as supervision or routine chart reviews, fines, and reprimands. All public disciplinary actions taken by the board are required to be entered into the physician's profile on the board's website, and that order can be viewed online by anyone who wishes. Additional collateral effects of a medical board action can include the loss of hospital privileges, loss of participation in a preferred provider organization, loss of enrollment with third-party payers, loss of board certifications, loss of a DEA registration, and exclusion from participation in Medicare, Medicaid, or other government programs. Depending on the allegations and the board's decision, a physician's reputation and livelihood could be destroyed. So the importance of promptly and properly responding to medical board complaints cannot be overstated. If you or a clinician in your practice receives a letter or a phone call from a medical board investigator, please do not procrastinate or ignore that notice. There are very important response deadlines. Make sure you immediately report it to MagMutual and allow us to help you with that response. This is a sad case from a state I used to work in. It was a normal night at a small Rhode Island hospital when a patient involved in a motor vehicle accident was brought in with significant injuries to the emergency department. The patient was stabilized and admitted to the hospital by a highly competent physician. That physician, trying to increase seatbelt awareness in the community, posted on Facebook about a patient she cared for that evening. She talked about the patient's injuries and advocated for seatbelt use. Now, this physician did not share the patient's name or any photos, but it was enough information in a small community that the description of the injury and method was enough information that the patient could be identified by unauthorized third parties. And unfortunately, in this case, the physician was fired from the hospital and reprimanded by the state medical board. Not only did the hospital take away her privileges to work in that emergency department for posting information online about this trauma patient, the board was notified based on the loss of privileges, and their investigation determined that the physician engaged in unprofessional conduct and was ordered to participate in educational courses on patient privacy and fined $500. Now, this physician didn't mean to breach the patient's privacy and didn't use any of the 18 PHI identifiers, but it was determined by the hospital and the medical board that there was a privacy breach due to that Facebook post, and those consequences were severe. This was an excellent physician, and she was only 45. Unfortunately, this story also made national headlines, and her career and personal life changed dramatically over one Facebook post. Let's talk about Hipaa violations that commonly occur with social media posts. Many that I see and hear about are not purposeful or nefarious, but inadvertent or sometimes careless. Posting images and videos of patients without written consent. I see this happen often in dermatology or plastics, And in pediatrics, I see photos with positive updates about a child's recovery, or photos where you think a patient is not identifiable, like a wound photo. If you don't have written consent to post a photo from a patient, just don't. Posting gossip about patients. I see this a lot in private chat groups. If you or your employees engage in private online groups, please do not post about patients. Even if you think it's private, it's not. There are many people behind the scenes at these companies who have access, and it's too easy for anyone in that group chat to take a snapshot or share outside that private group. Posting of any information that could allow an individual to be identified. And I think we've covered this one from the previous example. Sometimes you just don't know what could make information, quote, identifiable. Sharing of photographs or images taken inside a healthcare facility where patients or PHI are visible. Always look for anyone else who might be in a group shot, photo bombs, if you will. Also, look to see if there's any charts or computer screens that are visible. With technology available today, anyone can zoom in on a photo and see a lot of detail without much effort. Not only do you have to report privacy breaches to patients and the Office of Civil Rights, the OCR, there are potential Hipaa fines for privacy violations. Most of the potential fines you will see for individual social media breaches are small, about one patient and done unknowingly. An example of multiple privacy breaches in social media is like a mass social media campaign that targets all patients where the information is visible to all. We are going to talk about ways to reduce risk in this program, but this is why it's important to have a social media policy and Hipaa training in your organization. You do not want the OCR, Office of Civil Rights, to claim willful neglect from lack of a policy or staff training. That would only increase the fine potentials. All right, let's review some additional examples of Hipaa violations through social media. This is the case of Dr. Derm. This is a dermatologist who was treating a patient with great results. The patient was very happy and posted about her treatments and the success on social media, tagging the practice. The practice then used her posts to promote their business, sharing the information on their own social media sites. When the patients saw them using her information to promote themselves, she filed a complaint with the Office of Civil Rights and demanded $500,000 from the practice. Without the patient's consent, the practice did not have the right to confirm that this individual was a patient and disclose her medical information. And so keep this in mind. Patients can disclose all they want, and sometimes I wish folks would disclose a lot less, but organizations cannot, without the patient's permission, use any of the information or confirm the patient's posts on their own site in their own marketing materials. The case for vaccination. This Hipaa violation example is from a Texas children's hospital. A nurse there lost her job after posting on Facebook about a patient who contracted measles while traveling overseas. The nurse was trying to make a point to an anti-vaxxer group about the importance of vaccinations. In the post, she elaborated on seeing measles for the first time in her career. She said it was rough and the child was so sick. So much so that you couldn't touch the child without him crying or moaning in pain. The hospital was notified of the post and they started an investigation. Because the information pertained to one individual of a particular age group that had a particular disease, and was seen in a particular hospital, they determined that it was identifiable. And the hospital had to fire the nurse and report the incident to the Board of Nursing. And this is a horrible criminal post. A nursing assistant posted graphic photos with derogatory comments about a dying patient on Facebook. One of her colleagues recognized the patient by the bandages on his bed sores and reported her to the supervisors. This nursing assistant was arrested and convicted of invasion of personal privacy. The jury deliberated for just 30 minutes. As a part of her conviction, she spent 8 days in jail with 2 years probation. She was fined $500 and was ordered to avoid all social media sites. And she was also ordered to not take pictures of anyone without their explicit consent and was required to write a 1,000-word letter of apology. Her name was entered into a national database that prohibits her from obtaining a nursing license anywhere else in the United States. And this is a story for all the nurses. This is Miss Colorado Kelly Johnson, who gave a monologue during a Miss America pageant about being a nurse and caring for patients with Alzheimer's. One of the co-hosts of The View was asked why she was wearing a stethoscope during her speech, indicating that only physicians wore stethoscopes. Well, there was serious backlash on social media for those comments, including the creation of the hashtag #YourNursesUnite. The View co-host apologized, but nurses and doctors took to social media to explain just why nurses have stethoscopes. I bring this story up because while there was a lot of great, powerful posts about nurses, there were also some concerning ones. Some people made unprofessional conducts about denying care or providing lower quality of care. Nursing boards were notified about numerous posts similar to these, and if they were able to identify the individuals, they reached out to them as a part of their investigation into unprofessional conduct. So even if you're just making comments, you have to be careful about what you're saying. The nursing board, similar to the medical board, can determine unprofessional conduct, and that can have serious implications on a nurse's license and ability to find employment. And my last story is about a physician who blogged as Dr. Flea. He didn't think he would ever be identified and blogged all through a medical malpractice case. And his legal team had no idea until he was on the stand under cross-examination and was asked about it by the plaintiff attorney. Though these posts, he was horrendous. He belittled the courts. He made fun of the attorneys and the jury. And he gave away his rights for attorney-client privilege. Unfortunately, this case had to be settled for a substantial amount of money, even if it was defensible on the medicine. Here I put a selection of his blog posts. A dress rehearsal, where he spent hours on the phone with an attorney and gave us details about that conversation. A witness for the prosecution regarding the testimony of another doctor expected at trial. In her own words, Flea Googles the plaintiff counsel and describes her in uncomplimentary ways. What do malpractice juries care about? Flea opens the door on the attorney-client privilege to write about his trial preparation. Flea takes a screen test, describing his experiences being videotaped in a mock trial setting. Flea gets his syllabus, where he lets us know what his lawyer is telling him to read. Another day at the office, about being deposed, And it goes on and on. He thought he would never be identified, but it's very much too easy to identify people on social media, even if you think you're anonymous. The American Medical Association has great guidance on social media, and they have 5 cornerstones. Use privacy settings to safeguard personal information and content to the fullest extent possible on social networking sites. I see a lot of physicians use part of their names instead of their full name and only allowing friends and family to their personal media sites. Routinely monitor their own internet presence to ensure that the personal and professional information on their sites and content posted about them and others is accurate and appropriate. And now I know how busy physicians are. So if you don't have the time, set up some Google alerts with your name or task someone in your organization to help with that so you know what's being posted about you. Maintain appropriate boundaries of the physician-patient relationship when interacting with patients online and ensure patient privacy and confidentiality is maintained. My rule of thumb is not to discuss work, care, or treatment online. Always ask patients to make an appointment to be seen to discuss any medical care. And refer anyone to the office contact information. Have them call the office and make an appointment. Consider separating personal and professional content online. Because the lines can be easily blurred, you really have to remain vigilant with this one. And as with some of the stories we talked about, recognize that actions online and content posted can negatively affect your reputation among patients and colleagues, and may even have consequences for your medical career. Okay, let's talk about risk reduction strategies. Most people I speak with have a Facebook site or a Yelp page. But physicians ask about starting a blog or maybe a podcast. So for those who have a site or for those who are thinking about joining a new online platform, I recommend identifying and thinking about these items and having a written plan that includes guidelines for each of these, starting with a framework that can help answer questions and define direction down the road. Develop a communication plan. Identify your target audience. Define purpose of the site, including educational objectives and explicit consideration of the function of the site, such as degree of access and interactivity planned. Determine the level of privacy and security required. Establish scope of medical advice and redirection of patients to appropriate venues. And have a plan to deal with adverse events such as spam, negative comments, complaints, and unprofessional behavior. Identify the individuals who are going to be in charge of content management. Only provide accurate, up-to-date information. Ensure that the information is applicable to all policies. So make sure you're protecting patient privacy. Always obtain consent for photos and images. And remember, there are still copyright laws to consider if you're pulling images off the internet. And if you're providing general medical information, make sure it's generic and from a reputable source. Be careful about reposting or tweeting from individuals who you might not know their viewpoints on other issues and that you wouldn't want to be connected to. I think this is a very safe list of information that a practice should have on their social media site. Practice information, your address, hours of operation, medical specialties, contact information. Health tips like sunscreen, seatbelts, infection prevention, emergency preparedness. industry news, new information from like the Academy of Pediatrics or with flu rates, honors or awards of your staff, your physician, past employees, bios with photos of physicians and information about their background and training, any upcoming events like flu clinics or open houses, closures. And another one I might add, especially during this COVID-19 pandemic, any infection control procedures that the practice has put into place. Great online, safe content. It's important to manage your reputation online. And if you aren't online, it's a very good idea to see what people might be saying about you. If you're utilizing a social media platform where visitors can comment, any response to feedback should be timely, respectful, and honest. Large organizations typically assign someone to monitor online activity, so they know what the expectations are about responses and timeliness in responding. How do you respond to general inquiries? Let people know that social media isn't the right venue to answer medical questions. Have template responses to refer visitors to contact the office. It's a good idea to include a disclaimer that the site does not provide medical advice. And always direct emergencies to 911 or the emergency department, similarly to what you say on those phone messages. These are things not to do, simple as that. And I strongly encourage that for both professional and personal pages. Remember, just because it's on a personal page does not mean that it can't be used against you with employers, medical boards, or in a court of law. So don't make knowingly false or misleading statements. Don't share medically incorrect information. Don't use profanity, racial slurs, or sexist statements, and don't insult people. Remember and think before you post anything. It's really easy to share something you shouldn't. It's instantaneous, it's in the public, and once it's out there, it is permanent. And yes, there are things you can do to take down, remove, edit posts, but I've seen a lot of screenshots online. And similar to metadata on the electronic medical record, it's always there in the background. So we've talked a lot about patient privacy, but here are some of those general rules. Avoid writing about specific patients. Make sure you are in compliance with state and federal privacy laws. Obtain patient consent when required. Protect patient information through de-identification. And always use a respectful tone when discussing or talking with patients. Like the Dr. Derm story, obtain written authorization if you plan to use someone's testimonials or photos. Just because they've posted them doesn't mean that you can without their permission. And even if you remove the patient's name or any other of the 18 PHI identifiers, remember, it could still be considered identifiable with enough other information. I always recommend encouraging patients to use an online portal if you have one. It's a very secure means to communicate, and most portals allow for direct documentation into the medical record. So take advantage of that platform if you have one. Now, this is the topic I get asked about all the time: what to do about negative and sometimes incorrect blasphemous reviews. And this is the hardest part. If you have a bad review, You need to step away from it, take a calming breath, and never respond in anger. If you need to call somebody and talk about it, please do. And remember, folks online will say things that they would never say to somebody's face because they're separated. And that separation, anonymity, along with trying to make an impact that will cause people to say outrageous things online. My general recommendations are to thank people for their feedback, use a template response, be positive, and if necessary, take it offline. And sometimes this will be extremely hard. There is no doubt about it. In one of my previous roles, I oversaw patient experience for a very large healthcare system, and they sent me the really hard cases to deal with. And let me tell you, responding to patient complaints is an art form. And even if it feels personal, don't take it personally. So, if you get a review that's just not appropriate, profanity, negative, sexual, you should take every step to remove it from the platform. This slide is not about those types of reviews. If it's profane or really horrible, there are steps you can take to remove things or contact a company and ask them to remove it. And I would recommend taking those steps. But for generic negative reviews, current guidance by many sources recommends leaving it but responding to it. Customers expect to see some negative reviews, and they expect to see a response from the organization. Also, don't alter content. You don't want to be caught trying to hide something. These are some examples of responses. Now, they don't confirm patient status, and they are generic enough that they can be considered identifying. I recommend having a few versions of these ready to go for all reviews. That way, anger or emotions don't come into play, and you can ensure consistency with your responses. Take a look at, your local hospital Facebook pages, and you will see how they respond and use responses again and again. And I think these ones are really nice. Let's read a few of them. Thank you for sharing your feedback with us. We apologize for your recent experience. Please call us at your number so we can improve next time. Our practice aims to deliver the highest quality patient care. We love to hear about positive experiences. Thank you for your comments. We are sorry to hear about your experience. We are committed to providing the best patient care. Please feel free to contact us at your number so that we may speak with you and address any concerns. Thank you so much. We really appreciate your kind words and will be sure to pass your feedback to the staff. Simple, easy, templated responses will save you time and energy managing online reviews. If you don't have a social media policy, I implore you to develop something. Even if you just have guidelines in your employee handbook, that will help. Having a policy or something in writing to refer to and educate staff on will provide you with the backup if you have to let an employee go or terminate employment for violations of your policy. If you don't have anything and want a sample policy, please contact MagMutual. Our sample policy covers discrimination, harassment, wrongful termination, leaking of confidential or proprietary information, damage to the organization's reputation, productivity, and other issues. Expectations regarding employee behavior outside the realm of employment. Ban, limit, or monitor employee access to the internet or social networking sites, and define employees' responsibilities when witnessing inappropriate use of social media. Define policy regarding the use of organizational email addresses and graphics or logos. Define disciplinary actions for the inappropriate use of social media. Designate who can access social media on the organization's premises and for what purpose. Ensure that medical staff and employees acknowledge that they are not representing the organization when they post material to their personal social media sites. Ensure that medical staff and employees disclose any conflicts of interest. Ensure that the medical staff, employees, and students understand the need to adhere to the organization's social media policy, and revise or expand current policies regarding patient consent and the posting of patient information on social media. A great social media policy will cover all of those. So with that, I hope that this presentation has been helpful and will allow you to embrace the benefits of social media while managing the risks. These are my go-to resources on social media. The last one I want to specifically point out, if you aren't aware of, the American Academy of Pediatrics has a fantastic social media toolkit, and I recommend it to all specialties. Thank you very much for your time. If you have any questions or need any specific resources that I reference, please don't hesitate to contact me. Thank you.